Welcome to Truth Be Told About Going Wild. I'm your host, Robert Hensley, and this is the podcast inspired by the principles of personal rewilding. Today, I'd like to talk a little bit about safety. When we're talking about reconnecting to the natural world, being out in nature, spending time outdoors, it's really important that we are respectful of private property, that we are not trespassing, that we understand the concerns or particular safety features of a particular area. So let's start with private property. Private property, again, is privately owned. Without permission, you do not go onto private property at all. It's best to avoid crossing property lines if at all possible. If you are unsure of whether or not it is private property, it is best not to go there without permission. Ask first. It is not necessarily a case of better to ask permission or better to beg forgiveness than to ask permission. If you are in areas in the Northeast or the East Coast, there are certain places where it is just not safe to step onto private property without permission because people get very offended and may pull a gun on you. It happens. People are very protective of their spaces. Likewise, if you are going into a state park or forest lands that are owned federally or by the state, make sure that you understand the rules and regulation for that area. Do not go with a group onto state property without understanding the need for permits for certain group sizes at certain times of year. And this is especially important coming up in the fall, right? We all want to go outside. We want to see the changing of the leaves, the color of the foliage, but we have to be very, very conscious that this time of year is also hunting season across the United States. Um, and we cannot be outside without wearing safety colors. So unless you're wearing fluorescent orange, fluorescent yellow, bright blues, colors that do not exist in nature at any time, please be careful to, follow the rules and regulations that are set forth by your state regarding wearing safety colors when you're in the woods, when you're out amongst tall grass, things like that. There are so many stories of people being, again, accidentally. It's accidental, but people being confused for a deer or a turkey or whatever someone might be hunting at that particular point in time. And if you're wearing the wrong colors, if you're not standing out in some way, um, part of that fault does fall on you. Additionally, we don't go kind of uh, deep into the wilderness without taking our own safety precautions, making sure that we have water, making sure that we have a compass, making sure that we have some form of communication, that someone knows where we are, where we're going, how long we plan to be there, an expected arrival time back, just so that if we get lost or if we get hurt, that there is some plan of action. A first aid kit is always nice. Um, and that's not to say that we need to be afraid of going and spending time in nature, but again, if we're practicing mindfulness and being present, that means being aware of what we may need or what could potentially happen, especially if we are, going off trail or if it's a site that we haven't visited before, if it is terrain that you're not experienced with. That's not to say that you shouldn't have those experiences. We just want you to be prepared for them. There are so many cases, especially here in the area where I am, where it's a very large state park. Um, People come here because it is beautiful and there's so many wonderful things to see. However, they aren't prepared for the possibilities or all the possibilities that could happen on the trail or off trail. And at least 3 times a year, someone is being life flighted out of the state park because they got into trouble. And that's either that they've been hurt, they've fallen down, sometimes there's a rock slide, things like that, snake bites, wild animal attacks, uh, and other times it's simply that they don't know the area, they didn't scout it out, they didn't study a map, they didn't look at the topography, and they got turned around and just couldn't find their way back out. So yes, safety is a huge concern. Um, Also, thinking about permits and things for state parks, I'll just mention that most state parks have limits on the number of people that are allowed in a party. Beyond a certain size, they start to look at that as a potential commercial aspect or a commercial use. So without permits, it's possible for a park ranger to stop you and to fine your group. So if you don't want to pay those fines or get those tickets, again, it's really important to check with your state park office to make sure that a group of a certain size is going to be able to be accommodated on those trails. And the other thing is you don't want your group to run into another group and have issues on the trail. Um, there's no point in having beef with, another party over space if that's not necessary. And it's never necessary. It's the natural world. There should be space enough for all of us. Uh, but yes, we want you to again have those experiences, reconnect with the natural world, be comfortable outside in nature. Just be aware of the needs that you may have when you're there. All right. Thank you so much for listening, and please remember that there are 3 opportunities each week for new content from the Truth Be Told family of podcasts on the Club Paranormal channel on YouTube. Tony Sweet on Fridays with the original Truth Be Told. Wednesdays, we have Bonnie Burkert with Truth Be Told Transformation. And on Mondays, Truth Be Told about Going Wild. All of those shows air live at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 Eastern on their specific day. And if you have any questions or comments, concerns, you want to talk to me or see what I'm doing, please feel free to reach me via the contact page on the website. That's www.rhnaturereconnect.com. That's rhnaturereconnect altogether.com. And until next time.